Hi, my name is Brett Leininger,
My name is American Joe Metashevsky.
and we're with Old Line Government Affairs. Thank you for joining us for our end of summer podcast. We have just gotten back from the Maryland Association of Counties Conference down in Ocean City, Maryland, and there have been a couple of interesting developments, Joe, within the Maryland legislature.
There have. Generally, when we go to the conference, it's conference centric, but some moves have taken place that actually right towards the end of the culmination of the MACO conference, two members of the state legislature announced their departure. And while we were cruising along, on cruise control, if you will, the Speaker of the House seemed to be getting her sea legs and getting a good grip on the wheel of the House. Delegate Eric Bromwell announced his resignation and departure, and Delegate Steve Lafferty did the same. Former legislator and now county executive of Baltimore County has recruited those two individuals to be part of his administration. Delegate Bromwell is going to be the opioid strategy coordinator, and Steve Lafferty is going to be the chief sustainability officer. You know those guys really well. You've worked with Eric particularly, and you might want to just talk about
Sure.
A little bit of their experience.
Yeah, so Eric had been in the legislature for 17 years. From Baltimore County, representing District 8 in Perry Hall, and had risen up through the ranks in the House of Delegates, from reaching to the peak as Vice Chair of the House Health and Government Operations Committee, and then switched over last year to the Vice Chair of the House Economic Matters Committee. He has, because of his many years, most of the years in the House, extensive background pertaining to healthcare, and this is actually absolutely a very good opportunity for him to lead this very important issue in Baltimore County.
Yeah, you make a good point, Brett. Johnny O has chosen two very capable and qualified people to fill these spots in his administration. And actually, this is a good primer. There was a big turnover of legislators in the legislature this past election, and for them to see a change at the helm at speaker's level, and then to see these multiple changes at leadership is a really, really good session for them to see what really changes when there are openings. It's like a chess game or any kind of a board game. When you move one piece, you have to move multiple other pieces. Speaker herself was in the leadership. She was Speaker Pro Tem, but she also held on the House Appropriations Committee. She held two leadership positions. So her ascension to become Speaker literally will free up three leadership positions in addition to the two that we've just mentioned. So there's going to be lots of movement. Lots of people standing in line with their hat in hand, asking the Speaker to consider them for these leadership positions.
Yeah, Joe referenced the last election. It's really been the last two elections. We've seen a massive sea change within the legislature, and these two departures over to Johnny O's office really will just exacerbate that, especially with a new speaker as well.
The real politics, the real inside politics now is going to be played because the two seats that were vacated as a result of their move to Baltimore County and their administration will need to be filled. And this is where it gets bare knuckles politics. The state central committees from the respective districts of Delegate Bromwell and Delegate Lafferty, those central committees those members will vote on a replacement for each of them, and then the county central committee will vote and make its recommendation to the governor, and then the governor needs to acquiesce or accept those recommendations for those two new legislators.
So as we come to the leading up to the session 2020, obviously a lot of issues, but is there anything, just kind of experiences that you've seen as a former legislator and a longtime lobbyist, just some I guess, observations?
Well, we just talked about an interim. No two sessions are ever alike. And I've experienced many sessions myself, and I've never seen one duplicate the other. We're seeing an interim right now that's very different than the last interim. So you never know what the profile is going to be. Sometimes you get a pro-environmental session where a bulk of the legislation is going to be favorable to the environment. Sometimes there's more telecom there, and sometimes there's healthcare. You name it. You just don't know where it's all going to wind up. And there's always a surprise. There is always a surprise in the legislature. So I think we've got sports betting that's coming up. 5G, you're going to see more and more on commercials on television and radio and on your iPhone about getting involved with 5G. That's going to be your next generation for all of your devices to be able to handle all of their features at extremely high speeds and supposedly make your day or your job a lot easier. So we've got RPS, which is, you might want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, RPS governor has announced that he'll be supporting legislation or submitting legislation to the legislature to shift the renewable portfolio standard from what was just passed this past session from 50% up to 100% over a period of time. That was a highly debated piece of legislation the past session, but it looks like things will heat up again on the energy front. And really what has become the perennial subject of conversation is the Affordable Care Act and all of the things that are going on at the federal level and in Congress, and lawsuits that will end up wind their way through to the Supreme Court forces the state legislature to act to make sure that there are consumer protection provisions in place as it pertains to health insurance within the context of the Affordable Care Act.
And you can always expect a steady diet of consumer protection legislation. Just about every session will have some level of interest and a number of bills that will be pro-consumer. So you can expect a good sampling of consumer and protection and legislation in this coming session.
So thank you again for joining us at the end of summer podcast, and we look forward to talking with you again shortly.
It's going to be very interesting because there's going to be a geographic balance and a political balance that has to be struck. So stay tuned for those that like to watch inside political moves.